Have you ever stopped to think, really think, about what safe sex actually means? Beyond, the usual talk about preventing pregnancy or disease, what if that common understanding, the one we hear all the time, is actually, well, missing something huge, maybe even something eternal?
It's a challenging question to start with.
Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we try to cut through the noise and get you straight to being genuinely well informed. We dig into different sources, pull out the key insights, maybe a surprising fact or two, and hopefully keep it engaging. We tailor it for you, our listener, to really get the heart of the material.
And today we're tackling a phrase that gets redefined quite dramatically in our source. Christian safe sex, a return to God's design.
That's right. And all our insights for this conversation, they're drawn from a pretty detailed article over on www.epistles.online.
Yeah, that website, www.epistles.online, it offers a specific viewpoint for Catholics.
Yeah.
The author aims for a balance, trying to be neither modernist nor ultra-traditionalist.
Which, in today's world, can be a really valuable perspective, right? It gives a particular lens for looking at these kinds of profound topics.
Definitely.
So our mission today is to unpack what the source material means by safe sex from this specific Christian angle. It's often misunderstood, or maybe just not fully explored. I'll be guiding us through the article's main points.
And I'll be here to add some context, maybe connect a few dots, and look at what factor, why this perspective matters according to the source.
And we really do encourage you, visit www.epistles.online. You can read the full article we're discussing, get all the nuances. The author really digs deep. Plus, you can subscribe to the Catholic Epistles podcast there or on your usual platform for more deep dives like this.
And any support you can offer, the apostolate prayers, sharing his work, subscribing it all, helps keep that mission going and available for everyone.
Okay, so let's dive in. This core concept, safe sex. Usually today, that term makes us think physical, right?
Right.
Avoiding STIs, preventing pregnancy.
Right, that's the standard public health kind of definition. But the source material here, it just takes that and goes way, way deeper. It's redefining safe entirely.
How so? What's the expanded definition according to this article?
Well, what's fascinating is how it broadens things out. The author argues that for sex to be genuinely safe for Christians, it isn't enough for just the man and the woman involved to be, let's say, okay with it. There's a third party involved, God. It has to be pleasing to God, too.
Pleasing to God.
Yes. And the source is quite clear. If any one of those three, the man, the woman, or God, isn't properly honored in the act, then it's not just considered unsafe in some abstract way. In the author's view, it's actually gravely sinful.
So we're talking about safety beyond just the physical. It's moral, spiritual safety, too.
Exactly. It encompasses the whole person, the whole relationship, including the relationship with God.
Okay, so building on that, the
Right.
source must lay out some specific conditions then, right? What makes sex truly safe in this Christian framework? It's clearly more than just basic consent.
Yeah, this is a crucial part of the argument. Consent, free and full consent, absolutely essential. No coercion, no using the other person selfishly. That's the baseline. But beyond that, the act must, according to the source, conform to what he calls God's eternal, unchanging law, the law revealed through the church.
And does the source specify how that happens? Where does that conformity exist?
It does. The author emphasizes that there's really only one scenario where all these conditions are met: when a man and a woman are united in a valid sacrament of matrimony.
So marriage recognized by the church.
Precisely. A lifelong covenant entered into freely before God. Within that sacred bond, the source argues, sex becomes wholly aligned with God's purpose and fruitful, meaning open to life. Only then, the author states, is it truly safe in every single dimension: physical, emotional, moral, and spiritual.
Wow. So for the Catholic understanding presented here, safe sex isn't about catchy slogans or even just mutual agreement at the moment. It's fundamentally deeply tied to the sacrament of marriage.
Exactly. It lines up perfectly with what Pope Leo XIV reminded us about marriage. He said, marriage is not an ideal, but the measure of true love between a man and a woman. A love that is total, faithful, and fruitful. This love makes you one flesh and enables you in the image of God to bestow the gift of life.
That's a powerful quote.
It is. And the source really echoes that. It asserts quite directly that safe sex, in this complete sense, can only exist within that sacramental marriage where the man, the woman, and God are all rightly honored.
Okay, so the flip side then. The source must be pretty clear that outside of this specific marital bond, Sex is never truly safe.
Abundantly clear. That's a core assertion.
And what are the consequences outlined in the material? If sex outside marriage is inherently unsafe in this view, what does that lead to?
Well, connecting the dots in the article, it stressed that it's not just physically risky, though that can be part of it. The unsafety is deeper. It's eternal. The author argues it damages souls, contributes to family breakdown, scandalizes society by normalizing what's seen as sin, and fundamentally it offends God. The impact is presented as really far-reaching.
The article even tackles specific acts, doesn't it? Things some might see as private or maybe less serious, like masturbation. How does the source frame that?
It takes a very firm line. Masturbation is described as a serious sin. The reasoning given is that it's a selfish use of the body's sexual faculty, completely detached from the context of marital love and openness to life. The source sees it as distorting the gift of sexuality, pulling the person away from purity and towards self-centeredness.
And it doesn't stop there, right? What other actions are identified as always being outside God's plan, always unsafe?
Yes, the author lists several others explicitly. Adultery, obviously, fornication, meaning sex between unmarried people, cohabitation, living together like husband and wife without being married sacramentally. It also condemns same-sex acts and what it terms more perverse sins like incest and pedophilia. The common thread is that they offend God, harm the soul, and create scandal.
And there's a specific point for Catholics regarding communion.
A very important one in the source's view. It states clearly that Catholics living in what the Church defines as the states of grave sin, like cohabitation or an invalid second marriage, must not receive Holy Communion, not unless they genuinely repent and go to confession first. The author warns that receiving the Eucharist unworthily in a state of mortal sin is spiritually dangerous.
Moving on, the source also talks about a kind of tragic confusion spreading, even within the Church. What trends or specific points does it highlight there?
It does raise concerns about certain trends and figures. For instance, it critiques Pope Francis regarding alleged permissions for blessings for couples in irregular situations. The author questions the logic, asking how the Church can bless something God forbids, suggesting it contradicts divine law.
And there was another point about Pope Francis, something about the seriousness of sins.
Yes, the source refutes a reported statement attributed to Pope Francis, suggesting sexual sins are not so serious because they're not angelic. The article calls this view false, flat out. It strongly emphasizes that sexual sins are indeed serious, damaging purity, causing scandal, harming the individuals and society. It argues against minimizing their gravity.
And the critique extends beyond the Pope. Other figures are mentioned.
Indeed. Cardinal Tagle comes up, mentioned for apparently supporting communion for the divorced and remarried. The source counters this by citing Jesus' words directly. Whoever divorces his wife and marries another commits adultery. It insists no human authority can override that. Also, Fafard James Martin, S.J., is cited for his support of lifestyles the source considers contrary to Catholic teaching. The author adds a sort of maxim there. True love calls people out of sin, not deeper into it.
So the critique is quite broad. The article then seems to try and trace the roots of this perceived crisis. What does it start?
It starts right in the home, with parenting. The assessment is pretty blunt.
Next, the claim.
The claim is that many parents today, while providing materially, are failing in their duty to form their children spiritually and morally, not teaching them how to pray, how to recognize and resist sin, how to live virtuously. It suggests this lack of foundational formation leaves young people vulnerable.
And from the home, the analysis moves outward to the church pews and schools.
Yes. In the pulpit, the criticism is that some priests lack boldness. They fear offending people, even when essential teachings on marriage and sexuality are being challenged. The source uses Cardinal Pablo David's reported comment on divorce legalization in the Philippines. The world will not end if divorce is legalized, as an example of, in the author's view, a failure to strongly defend church teaching.
And in schools?
In schools, the critique is twofold. First, that some teachers may set poor examples by their own lives or by tolerating sin. Second, that modern safe-sex education programs often contradict core moral values. The source argues this kind of education actually betrays the goal of true education by essentially promoting immorality instead of teaching virtue and chastity.
So, if society, as the source argues, is rejecting God's design for love, for life, for sexuality, what's the ultimate fallout? What consequences does the article point to?
It points to tangible, real-world consequences. The example given is the rise in HIV cases in the Philippines. But the author frames this not just as a health crisis, but as a symptom of a deeper moral and spiritual sickness in society. It's seen as a direct result, a fruit, of abandoning God's plan.
Okay, so after laying out all these issues, these critiques, these consequences, where does the source leave us? What's the final message or call to action?
It brings everything back to that central, simple truth as the author sees it. He reiterates very strongly that only within a valid sacramental marriage is sex truly safe. Safe for the body, yes, but also safe for the soul, safe for the family, safe for society, and pleasing to God. Anything else, any alternative, is presented as a dangerous lie.
A lie that endangers, well, everything.
Exactly. So the call to action is quite direct. Return to the truth of God's design. Honor marriage, raise holy families, support faithful priests who aren't afraid to speak the truth, and speak that truth ourselves without fear. Stop promoting the idea of safe sex outside marriage, the source urges, and instead proclaim the beauty of God's actual plan for human love.
And this includes worship, too.
Yes, absolutely. The author connects it back to the need for a return to true worship, reverent liturgy, faithful preaching, seeing that as the essential foundation needed to cultivate holy lives and ultimately a more virtuous society.
It's a lot to take in, a really different perspective on a common phrase. Considering all this, maybe a final thought for you, our listener. What does safety truly mean in your own life when you think beyond just the physical or the superficial?
That's a good question to ponder.
And remember, this entire deep dive drew from that insightful article on www.epistles.online. Please do visit the site to read the full piece, get the complete context. The author offers that valuable, balanced Catholic perspective, not modernist, not ultra-traditionalist. And don't forget to subscribe to the Catholic Epistles podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
And again, if you feel moved to support the apostolate, your prayers, sharing the content, or subscribing really does help keep this important work going and accessible to everyone.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope it gave you plenty to think about.